For this assignment, I interviewed Cherelle Johnson, a 2010 graduate of James Madison University's AHRD program. Cherelle is currently an HR professional at Divine Unity Community Church, a foundation that she and her husband began in 2010. Along with leading the HR department at the church, Cherelle began her own limited liability consulting business called Consulting for Change, which she co-runs with another AHRD graduate. This year, Cherelle also finalized the writing of her book entitled Iron Dresses. In this interview, I begin by asking Cherelle about her experiences in graduate school, and then we venture into how the program molded her into the HR professional that she is today. Enjoy!
Well, first, I didn't know much about AHRD at all. I was a Centennial Scholar undergrad, and Mrs. Strawbridge was telling me about the program. She thought it would be a great fit for me. And so I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with nonprofits, work in community development, and gifted in administration. But I didn't know about AHRD at all until she told me about it. And then I knew a couple of students who went through the program. And so I asked, what's it about? And I really liked what they were learning, and I saw how they could apply. So I applied, got in, and graduated, most importantly. Yes. Well, I think because of the line of work I do, the program evaluation class, needs assessment, I use a lot out of that, mostly in what I do. Um, and then also learning theories. That was very helpful in developing curriculum, developing training, and things like that in my leadership class.
Were there any classes that you felt like I didn't really make much use of that class?
I can't remember. I only remember the classes that I made much.
Maybe like the research paper. Do you do research?
Yes, actually. The research class was helpful because I ended up writing a book, and so the method of research and the technicalities behind it and getting something published, that was helpful.
So what is your book? What is your book about?
My book is called Iron Dresses, and it's about strength and femininity. I did my research actually on what was the title? It was about stay-at-home moms, how mentor relationships affect the self-efficacy of stay-at-home moms. And so I got during that research, I got a lot of information about women and how mentor relationships affect women's brains and just and how they affect them. And so my book isn't about that specifically, but I used a lot of information that just to educate myself on just women in general. So when I wrote the book, it definitely helped to have done that research. Also, in my book, you'll find it was right during grad school when I wrote most of it, and so you'll find some learning theories that I refer to in the book. And so I talk about some things like that I learned in our leadership class about development and how that looks in a woman specifically and what that looks like with strength and femininity. And so yeah, I've used a lot of the program. It may be not as typical as the program would market how to use it, but I use it for the things I wanted to do. So right. Definitely the research class was profitable.
That's good.
I think a key to being a successful student is to it helped. I think it helped me that I worked before, and so it helped to have an idea of what I'm gonna do with this information. And so sometimes I know you could go through classes and go through school just going through the motions. I'm gonna study for this test so I can pass the class because I need it. But if you have an idea of what you actually want to do and what you're interested in, now every time I'm in a class, I'm applying it immediately. So for example, visual literacy and I forgot the other class we took first.
Digital media.
Digital media. All that before I would have just took the class because I needed to. But because I knew I would be able to use that stuff in starting a business and we were planting a church at the same time, I used all of that immediately. So that helped as well. And I knew I wanted to get involved in the community here in Harrisonburg. I knew I would be living in Harrisonburg. So all of my projects and things I did were more than just a project. It was me really, really investing in the community here because I knew I would be involved beyond. So having some sort of idea, you may not have it all because some experience helps you get that, but having some sort of idea, what do I like, and how can I apply this information is helpful. Having work experience, you can think, okay, this is how this didn't work well, or this is how I've seen this work well in my experience. But not having work experience, so internships are good, and just different things you get hands on. And so that's what I think will make it as successful and most profitable. But not everyone will know exactly what they want to do with it. But I know for me, that's what made it a very cool transition, a good program for me, and a good graduate education because I saw, as I was learning this stuff, I saw, okay, this will help me in this area of my life versus just being a class to take.
Right. Great.
If I could do it again, would I do anything differently? I don't think so. I don't think so. The only thing I was thinking was I did plan a wedding in my first year of graduate school, and so it was a lot to have to do. But I think in having a lot, I was effective in what I needed to do. I couldn't waste time. I didn't have a lot of time to waste. But no, I don't think I would do anything differently. I guess I could always read more and study more and give more efforts into things, but I can't look back and say, oh, I should have took advantage more. I don't think so. Multiple roles. One, my husband and I started a church here in Harrisonburg, and so my role, I'm on the pastoral team, the leadership team of the church, and then within that, my focus is HR for the church. And so I get to create evaluations for events. I get to create trainings, do what we call ministry edification, which would be in HR terms, professional development. I get to foster those things and really helping the ministry teams and different leaders develop as leaders. So all of that development stuff, all of that training I use within the church, aside from just the employment aspect of HR and the administrative stuff as well. Creating forms, creating instructional design, using instructional design when I create the form to teach not only have the form, but have someone learn how to use the form.
Right.
So all of that I use right in our church. So it's very exciting because I love to do that stuff and I get to do it at my church. And so I love it. So that's one way I use HRD. Another way is I have a LLC. Myself and a former student in the program, Elaine, we started an LLC, and it's Consulting for Change. And what we do, we work with nonprofit organizations and startup businesses to help them structure. And so, for example, we worked with the Harrisonburg Pregnancy Center, and we helped them. We did a program evaluation. They were doing trainings and doing different things for counselors or what they call client advocates. And so we were able to go to their trainings, do interviews. Sit in on different things and really evaluate that program and give them feedback on how they can make that better. And so that's that's a big chunk of what you're learning HRD. So I use that all the time. And so even with startup businesses, my undergrad background was marketing, so I had a business background, and so having the HRD side to that helps. So when I work with a startup business, we talk a lot about a mission, vision, and value statement. That's key. A lot of people don't have that, or even businesses that are already operating, they don't operate within that mission and vision statement. So we have to change that. And so I love doing that. I love helping people pursue their dreams. So with Consulting for Change, I had the opportunity to meet new people, and a lot of our work has been with individuals who have a passion to start something, they just don't know how to structure it. And so we're able to help start that. And so I use HRD in everything I do professionally. I think the program did prepare me, but more so than the program preparing me, I think I took advantage of what the program had to offer.
Right.
And so someone can easily say, I wasn't prepared for this, or they can say it completely prepared me. Because I had an idea what I would do with the information, I was ready for it, I feel like. And so I took advantage of what the program had to offer me, and so therefore I feel prepared.
Did you talk to a lot of professors and getting some direction on what you wanted to do?
I did mostly Dr. Thal. She was my research chair at the time, so I was around her a lot, just doing the research stuff. And so she actually was one who encouraged myself and Elaine to go ahead and start our business. We did a dream assessment in her class. I think it was program evaluations class or needs assessment. One of those classes. I had her for both.
Was that the first year?
No, this is the second year. Yes, my first semester of the second year course. And she would have us go up and write our dream. And then as a class, we would assess what it will take for that to happen. And so when I went and Elaine went, it was almost identical. And so she was like, you could easily start a business with that. And I knew I had a business background, and I knew that was something I wanted to do anyway. And so she definitely encouraged us in that. So we just kept her informed, and she just gave us tips and different things like that. So that was helpful, just to have access to Dr. Dahl in that. But what was the question? Oh, did I talk to anyone else? Any professors? Not much, but I knew I had access to. I would talk to Dr. Fukusaki, ironically, about church planning, because she has a lot of background in religious studies and things, and so that was just an interesting dynamic as well. So, kinda.
Great.
I use technology a lot, and so I'm not at all a web designer, but I've designed a few websites because of the program. So being introduced to Weebly, I think we did Weebly for something, and I use that as my portfolio. So then I use that the actual website for the church is under Weebly, and so but we have our own domain name. But it's a template under Weebly. So I designed the whole website there. I did Consulting for Change. I did our website. And then I have another organization called Iron Dresses. It's a nonprofit, community-based organization for women's empowerment. It's really to promote women to live in the strength of their femininity. Again, I wrote my research on women, and I was able to use all of that here. And so I created the website using a template there. And so I find myself doing a lot of web design, which isn't my strength. But in the program, we had to do web design enough where I knew what the look should be like. You know what I'm saying? So I was able to do a basic website enough to promote and market. And so technology on that end, I'm using the computers for everything, social media to market all of the organizations I run. Yeah, I use technology for most of what I do. So yes.
So you were in instructional design concentration?
No, I didn't actually have a concentration.
Oh, okay.
I didn't. I
took whatever classes.
I took the classes that we were supposed to take for instructional design. So visual literacy, I think, was the option that I took that I didn't have to take. Okay. And so I took that in my last semester, and that was helpful. And just sometimes developing PowerPoints for church or just for different board meetings I'm a part of. Those little things make all the difference. Even in the church, my husband and I do marriage counseling, and so we develop a curriculum, we created a booklet, and we have PowerPoint, and we use SlideShark and just different things when we do marriage counseling. Even it makes it more personal when the couple comes in and we have a picture of them, and so visual literacy, all of that helps with that. What font, what size, and all of that stuff is very. I'm using everything.
Right. So in developing a curriculum, how do you do that? Are you just like, okay, I'm gonna write out my curriculum, or are you basing it on other curriculums that you've seen that work, or how do you do that?
And a lot of times it's based on the individuals that I'm developing it for. Okay. And so I use a lot of things from learning theories, and so how adult learning and things like that. And so some of it will be, just informal research. Okay, who's going to read this? And should it even be written? Should it all be visual? Should it be like a call and response with a text or something like that? So really, I'm basing it off of who's going to receive the curriculum. So I develop it there, and usually, the content will come from me or my husband, or depending on what entity I'm developing curriculum for. But it definitely is based off of who is this for? The curriculum is for the learner. And so who is my learner? What's the age? What's the demographic? What's the experience? And so how are they best going to learn? So that's how we develop a curriculum there.
Right. So do you feel like each marriage counseling session is different based on the couple that comes in?
Yes. Each marriage is different. Now, the booklet we give, the information and the content is the same, but how we structure the session is different. And so it depends on, we have some couples who come in who are already married and did not have premarital counseling. We have some couples who come in that there's just an issue. And so that's a whole different thing. Then we have some couples who are coming in, they're engaged and they want to be married and they want, just mentoring and counseling up to that date. And so we have a certain curriculum for that as well. And then we also do a group session. So it looks different with the group as well when we talk about finances and when we talk about health as far as being a couple. That's more of a group session thing because, again, social learning is something that we develop most of it based off of because we have different people in different walks of life and different experiences. So we have a couple who they're already married, a couple who's not married, and a couple who have been married for 30 years. That's a whole lot of interaction and experiences that they can gain from each other. And so we definitely value that group dynamic as well. So it varies as far as how we cover the content. The content is the same, but the curriculum, it stays pretty templated. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But how we go over, we may not go over it in the same order depending on the couple, depending on the time. And we meet at different places, depending on a couple. Some couples we meet at our home. It's a different atmosphere. The fences are down. Some couples we meet here because they need a very structured, straightforward type of environment. So again, we assess the learner and then go from there.
Great.
I use AHRD in all three organizations. And so when I'm developing something, it's almost the AHRD model is almost a natural thing for anybody who's going to do something. We may not call it certain things, but you got to analyze. you develop and I analyze everything, just like I said before, whether it's marriage counseling, whether it's we're doing a training for the church, whether I'm having a training or professional development with my Iron Justice team, whatever I'm creating, I got her to take sometimes I analyze something here. I analyze and then I develop it, design it, and implement and evaluate. And so evaluation is something huge, especially here at the church because we have so many different leaders doing different things. And so as on the pastoral team, we need to know, is this effective? How can this be done? How can we train up the leader? Do we need to do this? Is this effective for the budget? So to have evaluations turned in, hey, we did this event. We had a nightlife event, which is a Christian party in a sense. Okay, would we do it again? Let's have the leader assess from that perspective of planning it, and then we have participants can assess as well. And we usually use like a level 1 evaluation or something like that for the participants. But the AHRD, yes, that's definitely something I use at the church. Consulting for Change. I mean, that's the line of work we do for Consulting for Change is AHRD, so we have to use that in everything, and even in Iron Justice, if we're planning an event or something like that. So, and it's more, I don't necessarily sit down and say, okay, am I covering these spaces? It's kind of almost a natural flow.
Right. It just makes sense.
Yeah. So, using that, I learning theories, like I said, different theories, social learning theories a lot since everything I do is dealing with people.
Right.
And so I'm not necessarily selling a product ever or selling something necessarily so tangible. I'm always developing people, giving an idea or making something better. And so I'm always thinking about who is receiving, who will be utilizing. And so I have to use learning theories. I mean, I don't have to, but it's effective if I can better structure things when I use it through that lens.
Great. So for my last question, what advice would you give someone who wants to go into HR?
What advice? Who wants to go into the field of HR? That's a good question. What advice would I give you?
Or maybe a graduate in the program or anything like that.
My biggest advice would be exposure, because everything I feel like everything I'm doing within HRD, it doesn't scream HRD. You wouldn't necessarily hear what, okay, I work at a church, I have a consulting firm, and I have a nonprofit for women. That doesn't necessarily say, oh, this takes HRD, I should get a degree in HRD to do these things. And so, but through exposure, talking to different people, really understanding what they do, you'll see, okay, well, this is really translated in this way. Who would have thought that a church would utilize the Addy model to do what they do, or
Right.
you necessarily wouldn't look at a church and say, "Oh, okay, that's a instructional design principle." That you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of translating there, but exposure would do that. Being exposed to different people and different things, and being able to translate into HRD terminology or out of HRD terminology into a different aspect. I really feel like the HRD program will be healthy for anybody that's going into some type of professional field.
Right.
From the most basic things to the most complex, you're going to use some aspect of what you learn here. So I feel like it's a program that can be, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. You'll gain great skills in this program. And so, but you can utilize having the idea of what you want to do, you can better capitalize on what you're going to gain. Right. And so exposure, that's the advice I would give. Expose yourself to people and things and professionals. Ask the questions, hey, what are you doing and what does it take to do this, and what does it look behind the scenes? Because you wouldn't know otherwise. You're just looking to say, oh, that it just means you do this. You might see an accountant, okay, that's kind of boring because all you do this, but you have no idea the amount of HRD that could even go behind the scenes there. So,
right,
expose yourself to people, things, and places.
I just thought of this one. Why did you decide to go to grad school for AHRD versus getting your MBA?
That's a good question. I actually always thought I would do MBA. Wow. I always thought that I would get my master's. Business administration is the most sought after degree, you know. And so I always thought corporate America. I always thought, okay, well, I'm gonna do business undergrad. I'm gonna go work in a Fortune 500 company, gain some experience, and then start my own. Mm-hmm. My end goal was to always do what I'm doing. I've always had an entrepreneurial heart. Right. And so just through undergrad, working, and through undergrad, did marketing, loved it. But really, when I worked for 2 years, I was an admissions counselor here at JMU. I really had an opportunity to learn who I was better, and I didn't really want to work in corporate America. I wanted to work there in order to get to something else. And so through talking to people, like I had Miss Strawbirds give me, like I would have never known anything about the program here at JMU had she not said anything, or other people in the program who I knew, like Jasmine Williams and Troy Burnett. They were like, "Hey, this is a great program." I'm like, really? Like, where did this come from? I had never in my life thought about this thing, and it's a newer program at large as well. Right. And so what I want to do, or what I am doing, and what I keep pursuing, I could have done with a business degree, but I would have lost a lot of that people connection. And so that's even why I did marketing, because I felt like it was like the counseling of the business, if that makes sense. I'm still working with people, and so just learning myself more, having work experience allowing me to see, what I really want to do, and so yeah.